It's the decline of the peacock. I'm John Phillips, and this is After Hours. In the world of network television, the national broadcasting company used to be the king of the hill. Whether it was phenomenally successful sitcoms like Seinfeld, the Summer and Winter Olympic Games, or The Tonight Show, NBC regularly crushed their opponents in the ratings. As a consequence of this, NBC News programs were given healthy lead-ins, and they exploited that advantage to dominate their competition for an entire generation. Well, times have changed, and blue-chip NBC News programs are getting beat in the ratings game. For the first time in 6 years, ABC World News with Diane Sawyer bested the NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams in the highly coveted 25-54 demographic. In April of 2012, ABC's Good Morning America snapped the Today Show's mind-boggling, get this, 16-year winning streak and became the top-rated morning news show on television, and they've only widened their lead since. On Sunday mornings, Meet the Press with David Gregory now comes in third in network competition. These bad numbers have industry observers scratching their heads trying to figure out why Americans are turning off the Peacock network in mass numbers. Did Brian Williams suddenly start picking the wrong stories to cover? Is David Gregory not landing the big-name guests? Can Al Roker no longer predict rain in Portland? To the contrary, I believe a case could be made that NBC is ceding their drop in ratings because they've alienated their conservative and Republican viewers, otherwise known as half the country. And the blame can squarely be placed on the shoulders of their cable news sister network, MSNBC. Consider this. A new Brookings and Public Religion Research Institute poll found that MSNBC is the least trusted TV news source among Americans. Among all Americans surveyed, only 5% identify the left-leaning MSNBC as their most trusted TV news outlet. Well, Fox News gets 25%, broadcast networks get 23%, CNN gets 21%, public TV gets 11%, and get this, The Daily Show with Jon Stewart gets 8%. All of them garner more trust than MSNBC. Any regular viewer of MSNBC shouldn't be surprised by those numbers, or Republican hostility to that network. Every time an MSNBC personality goes on their airwaves and says something awful about Republicans, they do so with the NBC name on the screen, the peacock in the corner, and the NBC News brand front and center. Their personalities also regularly appear on NBC News programs, including Willie Geist on The Today Show, Tamron Hall on Today, and Mika Brzezinski on the NBC Nightly News. Not to mention that Phil Griffin, the president of MSNBC, used to be the executive producer of The Today Show. Let's face it, the NBC News brand is MSNBC, and Republican viewers are starting to make that connection. Not only will this problem continue to cost NBC News GOP viewers, it could cost them the ability to host a debate in the upcoming 2016 GOP primary. Here to kick this around is the After Hours panel. She's the host of the Tammy Bruce radio show, which you can get online at tammybruce.com. Tammy Bruce. He's a very fair-minded civil rights defense attorney who can get at clearthecourt.com, Mr. Leo Terrell, and he's the PJTV contributor from his home studio in the great state of Texas, Mr. Scott Ott. Scott, we'll start with you on this one. If you're Reince Priebus, you're the chairman of the RNC, are you going to give a debate to NBC? Are you going to let Chris Matthews or Rachel Maddow or Matt Lauer or any of their personalities host a debate, or have they ruined their chance?
Oh, sure, we should do a debate on MSNBC, but we should change the ground rules a little bit. The candidates won't be debating each other. They'll be debating the hosts from MSNBC. I think that would be a lot of fun. That's something that maybe people would even tune into MSNBC to watch. Now, listen, as my regular viewers know here, I'm practically Amish. I don't watch regular television, but every once in a while on the interwebs, I see a segment from an MSNBC show. Just the other day, I saw one where the host, whose name I do not recall, was ranting and raving like he was a party boss trying to fire up the faithful at a local Democratic Party or union meeting. Now, when people tune into something that's ostensibly a news program, they're not trying to go to a political rally. And they don't, you know, I was involved in local politics pretty heavily. Most people aren't very interested in that. It's hard to get people to show up for political rallies, and I don't understand why MSNBC thinks it would be a fruitful strategy for them to make an entire network look like a local political meeting.
Tammy, have the lines been blurred here to the point to where MSNBC and NBC News are completely indecipherable from one another?
I don't know if it's completely indecipherable, but even the network talent is having trouble, like David Gregory. They hired at one point a psychologist for him to figure out what his problem was. So they seem to be, it's true.
No, it's true.
That's true.
I saw that.
So you have strange casting decisions, if you will, for the programs on the network as well. You also had that problem with Matt Lauer and Ann Curry.
Yes.
You know, that behavior was very strange. I think that the cultural problem is in both networks, and it's not just the viewer opinion or perception. I think it's a genuine flow over of an attitude, and also keep in mind, during the election, MSNBC received, I think almost exclusively, the White House's budget for commercial airtime buying. They were effectively moving taxpayer dollars into MSNBC, and when GE owned it, to GE as well. So you have an internal commitment. Maybe it was considered a bailout, I don't know. But there seems to be this strange commitment to strange attitudes that cut across both networks.
Let's say Leo Terrell's a fair-minded president of NBC News. Do you keep a church and state separation between MSNBC and NBC News? Would you allow Willie Geist to be on the Today Show, or Tamron Hall to be on the Today Show, or Mika Brzezinski to be on NBC Nightly News?
Well, I would, because it's synergy, because you want to cross promote. But I think you're 100% correct. You know, I personally look at MSNBC for about 2 minutes, and I'm predicting they can never say anything damning to the president. It's always a pro-Democratic, pro-President Obama position. And I think that has blurred the lines with NBC. However, ABC, network, liberal, conservative, George Stephanopoulos, those guys are just as bad. But you don't have that horrific, what I call, effect of MSNBC with ABC. MSNBC has basically morphed into NBC, and that has created that problem.
Chris Matthews, who of course is the host of Hardball, was able to moderate Republican debates, I believe, in 2008. And if NBC gets the debates again, who knows if they'd let him. Let's go ahead and look into the mind of Chris Matthews as to what types of questions he would ask Republican candidates or Republicans who might be nominated for the Supreme Court. Let's go ahead and look what's on his mind.
Question to Mr. Kennedy: do you believe in evolution? Or are you a fundamentalist who believes in the Bible as written? Has man been around millions of years, or say just about 6,000? It's a key question because it raises the matter of whether you believe in science or not. A question for the fundamentalists who give that answer: why do we conduct health experiments for people on animals if there's no relation? Do you believe man affects climate change? There's a good one. Do you wish to outlaw abortion? And if so, what should be the punishment? If having an abortion doesn't deserve punishment, why are you pushing to outlaw it?
Scott, are these questions that are on the minds of any potential Republican primary voters, where the candidates would go and they'd be subjected to these questions and they would get in trouble? I mean, this would be designed to make them look bad. I just don't understand why the RNC should ever let this network moderate a debate again.
Well, or that the candidate should have the guts to say, you know, Chris, you're going to need to ask a serious question that people are really interested in. I'm not going to play games with you here. You know, when I was running for office, I got invited by the local coalition of unions. I forget what they call that, but it's all the unions. They get together, the union bosses get together. And I got invited by them to come and sit in a room with them and answer questions about my candidacy. And I knew there wasn't a chance in the world that I was going to pick up a single vote there. But I went there because just being there and just being in front of that audience humanizes you a little bit, and it kind of defangs people who hated you just on principle. At least they get to look you in the eye. And so for that, I think political candidates should go in the worst places possible. They should go to for them, they should go to the inner cities. They should go to places where Republicans generally fear to tread, and therefore they should go on MSNBC. But that doesn't mean you have to play the game that Chris Matthews is playing. I was in New York City once, and Chris was shooting his show during the Republican convention, and I was walking past this park where he was making the show, and this production assistant came out, grabbed me and my family and said, "Hey, you want to see a TV show being made?" And I thought, gee, well, yeah, okay, sure. And so they brought us right up to the rope line. I was standing within arm's reach of Chris Matthews, who was directly in front of me, and my entire family was in the shot. And it was only later that I realized the reason they brought us up there is because everybody else in that crowd was like a smelly hippie holding up a kooky sign from the 1960s. They were trying to show America that there were some normal people in the background.
Now, I agree with you on one point, Scott. I do think that Republicans should go to territory, they should go to the inner city that's not typically been a Republican place that's good for Republicans, or the Republicans generate a lot of votes. But I do think that the primary schedule last time around and the debates last time around did hurt Mitt Romney, did hurt the Republicans. And I want to refer to a George Stephanopoulos question to Mitt Romney as an example of what happened last time around and why it hurt the Republicans. Let's take a look.
Governor Romney, do you believe that states have the right to ban contraception, or is that trumped by a constitutional right to privacy?
George, this is an unusual topic that you're raising. States have a right to ban contraception. I can't imagine a state banning contraception.
And so that's how Romney handled it.
Yeah.
But should the Republicans try to change the way the debates are done next time?
Look, let's be honest. These debates, and the reason why people like Chris Matthews want to ask those questions is because they're not really interested in the answers. This is theater. This is to influence everyone who's watching. It's not just Republicans who are watching. And it's not just to learn about the candidates. It's to influence the audience itself that's watching. There is an agenda with all of the network broadcasts. People were saying last time for 2012, the Republican Party should set up its own base. They should cast it themselves and set the reporters themselves. It should be done, maybe they can buy airtime on cable or even do it on the internet and cable. We've got to get out of this notion that the networks matter. And I think it's because the people in the Republican Party think that it's still celebrities and you've got to be on the big networks. Not really, because the damage that's done is deliberate and it will happen again if they allow it.
What happens if the Republicans say no more NBC News, no more PBS, no more CBS? We're going to let Rush Limbaugh moderate one debate. We're going to let the Breitbart people nominate one debate, maybe, or moderate it, maybe even PJTV. What would happen?
Mistake, mistake, mistake. What Scott said is absolutely correct. They will just limit their audience. They won't get out to the general public and humanize themselves. It'll be a horrific mistake. The one problem also, John, that we haven't talked about is that the primary season is so long. There was, how many, 2,000 debates, 3,000 debates?
They're changing that this year.
And so they got to change that, and they have to sort of limit the number of debates.
Why is Scott laughing?
You know, he said 2,000 debates. I was thinking, you know, if I were in Mitt Romney's position, he did about as well as he could there and still maintain decorum. Of course, I wouldn't have maintained decorum. I would have said, George, what do you mean ban contraceptives? I mean, most people aren't using them anyway. After all, George, you're here.
But now, look, this is, you wouldn't limit your audience. Buy an hour. This is what Reagan did. This is what Perot did. Buy an hour on the networks. And people will tune in just out of curiosity, have an exchange and a debate. People are going to watch no matter what.
All right, Tammy, you get the last word. You can get her online at tammybruce.com. Leo Terrell, fair-minded civil rights defense attorney, clearthecourt.com. And our pal Scott Ott, you can buy his political satire books at amazon.com. If you'd like to comment on today's show, you can do so in the comments section below. For After Hours, I'm John Phillips. Thanks for watching.